Hi, I'm Derek, and in this quick video, I'm going to show you some clever named range tricks in Excel, 5 of them to be exact, with a couple of bonus items. If you're not familiar with named ranges, it's a powerful but relatively unused feature in Excel that can give you the ability to centrally organize things and just make your files easier to use. Now, there is a free workbook with the examples that we're going through right here. You can catch a copy of that from the link in the comments below. And if you're not familiar with named ranges, I'm going to throw a link to an article that is a comprehensive kind of how-to with those. And this is just going to take it to the next level. So without further ado, the 5 different tips. The first one we're going to touch on is making named ranges dynamic. So they can grow either the rows or the columns, usually it's rows, but they can grow as your data does, so that what you're referencing is going to grow with them. So there are a couple of different approaches to this. The legacy approach with the first example here is going to grow with using the functions offset, count A, and max. And there's other ways to do this. This is just the approach that I generally take. So as an example here, this is right here is the formula that I'm using with this first approach. Okay, so we've defined a name here. You can find this going to formulas, named range, and this color one here. Notice there's that same formula. Okay, so we're referring to that. This is the source of the data, so we're referring to basically here, and then it's going to add to it. That's being linked to this drop-down list, so notice it matches going all the way to black. If we put brown in here, notice at 1 it's going to be updated to here. This is a dynamic range that links to it, and then behind the scenes that dynamic range is going to be referenced with data validation in the drop-down list here. So that's one way to do it. The other way is with the second one, uses the dot operator. Now it's really tough to see, but after the colon, there is a dot. Here's just a little bit bigger. So just to the left of the second reference there is a dot. It's just to the right of the colon. That basically says go all the way down to cell O2000 and then go up to the last used cell. Now that requires a version of Excel kind of late 2024 and beyond, or Excel 365 to make that work, but it gives you the exact same result. So over here we're referencing using color 2, that happens to be this list, and then the drop-down list works the same way. It's just a matter of which approach you're using. So that's the first one. Very, very helpful. There's a reason I'm starting with that. It saves a lot of time taking that approach. The second example is making named ranges relative. Now, by default, when you make a named range and you select a cell you want to refer to, whether it's one cell or a whole bunch of them, it's going to be with an absolute reference. So it's going to be fixed. It's always going to refer to that one spot. But you don't always necessarily want that. So in this example, we've set it relatively. So I'm going to pick the cell here. That's where I set it initially. Okay. And now over here, we've got one that says last total cell is what I named it. And it's referring to the cell just above the one I just selected. So B17. Okay, now notice the dollar signs are not there, so it is relative. Okay, that's key, because as this moves around, if we were to insert a row here, and we were to add a few things to it, notice how they are still picked up, because last cell, you see this reference here, it's B14 through last cell. Last cell is always a cell right above. Or if when you set it, it's 2 above, or 2 to the right, or both, or whatever, it's going to take that into account. So it's helpful for examples like this, or when you want that to be relative. Some people do it with running totals. So there's a lot of cool ways how you could leverage that as well. Just know which one you want. The third example here is using constants. Now you can link something like a tax rate or a growth rate or something like that, or an allocation rate, to another cell somewhere in an assumptions list, and that's fine. You could totally do that. Or you could put it in here in the named range manager. So we've got our sales tax rate. It does not have to be a formula or a cell range. It can be a constant value, text, number, date, whatever. Okay. So we're just referring to that here. So if you look at the formula that we've got, it's cell B10 times that sales tax rate. Okay. We're rounding by 2 digits, and then we're coming up with this total of the 2 of them. Okay. Now let's say you're using it all throughout your workbook. If you were hard coding that amount, or if you're using a formula, it would not be working correctly. Okay, so if you wanted to be able to update those all over the place, then you could do that using that named manager. You just come up here, you'd say, all right, well, we're just going to change this to maybe add 100 basis points, make it 9.25. And notice it updates there, and anywhere else it's being referred to. Okay, it gives you a great way. The only place it's not is where I just hard coded this little thing. So I probably have to go in here and do that as well, or maybe we find a way to link that somehow. Okay, but another great example of how you can use named ranges in a way you probably didn't realize. Another way is to use the formula results to give you some really useful value. something I do all the time is try to figure out where's the last row in a data set. And so you're seeing the definition here. We're taking the row of, actually it looks like I updated this since I last looked at it. So it's going to be defined as get last row. Actually, let's use this guy. Okay, we'll touch on the other one in just a moment. This is the definition, so we'll put that right there just in case you're looking at it. Okay, so I updated it, inserted a couple rows. So it's starting here and it's saying where is the last row? We're going to take off one so we don't double count one, and we're going to find out from there, going all the way down, how many are used. This does assume you don't have any blanks in here. If you do, you need to somehow account for those. Maybe do minus count if of blanks or something like that. But it's basically using the name of last row to figure out where's the last one. So you see it in place right here, just referencing it equals last row. A lot of times that's helpful as a part of a robust formula calculation, is knowing where that is. And instead of having to use this entire formula every single time, you can assign it to a name and call it very easily, just like you're seeing right here. Now the fifth example is using Lambda to define a custom formula or a custom function. I've been doing this like crazy, so if you haven't seen that, you probably haven't been paying attention, because I've been talking about it quite a bit. I've been using these a whole lot. Got over 80 of them that I use in kind of my library. We'll touch on that in a minute. But what this is doing is giving you the ability to, through a name, define a custom function. Like apply tax is one that's pretty helpful. Okay, so that's a name. We're starting with Lambda here. Here's what the whole thing looks like. I use line breaks and indentation, so it's easier to read, kind of like with programming. Now with the first one here, we're saying, hey, here's the pre-tax amount, that pre-tax argument. This one is optional, the tax rate. The rounded decimals is also optional. And we're basically saying, hey, if you omit that, use that 8.25 rate. If we omit the decimals, use 2. Otherwise, we're just going to apply this whole thing, and it makes it so easy. Now, with spelling formulas, we can do a couple of things at once here. So here's all my pre-tax amounts, and I want to apply tax to them. So here, we've got the ability to just use that reference of that entire column or that cell range there, and it's going to apply that default tax rate and the rounding. Notice I didn't put those in here, okay? And it's going to spill that to this entire thing because we're referencing several cells. We're referencing an array, not just one cell. That's with no arguments, the optional ones. Here we're using those optional ones. So it's the exact same thing, but we're using a different tax rate and a different number of rounding, but we end up with very, very similar results. Just a different tax rate there. But by using that custom function, again, just like with the other named range approaches here, we're able to manage that centrally in just one place. So if we ever need to adjust what those defaults are or the way that should calculate, we just come up here, we go to that function, and we apply it. Now, just like with that previous example where we're using the last cell, here's another one that I built that does the same thing. So if we come over here and we wanted to do the same thing, getting that last row, I like to start mine with an L to let me know that they're lambdas, but notice that these are also going to pop up as you start typing. So we just have to say where is the top cell and then optionally give it a max row count, and we get the same result as right there. That is so easy. Instead of typing this whole thing out, you do it once and get to reuse it over and over again. Really cool stuff, right? Now, as a bonus, I do stuff like this all the time. So the two that I use the most here, I use a lot of lambdas and I do a lot of dynamic functions. So if I was going to build something like a color list, people understand color, so I use this example a lot. I'm going to show you how easy it is to define one of these when you use an efficient approach like I do. So let's say we want to build a custom named range that's dynamic, like that's going to reference these. Okay, I copied a name to the clipboard. You don't have to do that, but it's easy enough if you already have it. I'm going to run a macro called add dynamic named range. And then it prompts me, and anything that is in that clipboard is going to be used here as a default name. And then it's going to ask, are you going to do a vertical list across rows, very common, or H for horizontal across columns? Either of those are options. Normally you want that to be rows. So now that is going to be referenceable, whether you put it in a drop-down list or just reference it. So we just made this one, and notice there's a list, and it's going to grow automatically just like before. Okay, very, very easy. Now, if you wanted to make that a drop-down list very quickly, we still have that name in the clipboard. There's another one I use called add derivation from named range, because I use these all the time together. Notice there's our range. Couldn't be simpler. We don't even have to go through the menu to do that. And in one other example of using this, and I've been doing a whole lot of this, Let's say we want to calculate a date like each of these years here. We want to know when Easter is. Okay. Well, I made a custom Lambda for Easter. Okay. So I'm just searching with the big search box. Here's what I've used. Here's the group. Here's the formula. Here's the comment right here. So I can have all the ones in the group be added at once or just one of them. I'm going to go ahead and do all of them. Okay, so in just one step, several of those were added to this workbook, and you can see them here. A whole bunch of date types were added. So if I just type equals L_Easter, okay, then we're going to reference one or more of those. And there's Easter for the entirety of the next 10 years or so. Okay, a lot trickier than going up here and typing in a formula behind Easter, which is pretty intense, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff basically doing some crazy math to figure out when the moon is in alignment, all those different things, the way that it's calculated. So, in summary, a lot of cool ways to use name ranges: dynamic, relative, constant values, the formula results, or a custom function itself. Don't forget to grab that free workbook that has all these examples in there if you want to. If you have any of your own examples of how you've used name ranges creatively, please share your own in the comments. If you want to try out some of these cool bonus tools we just went through, I'll put a link down there in the comments to that as well. If you like this, please give it a like, comment with what you liked, please share with a friend, and of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on other cool Excel tips, tricks, and tools just like these. Thank you so much for watching and have an excellent rest of your day.